Hey BookTube! My name is the Book Mage and here we are in 2020. I wasn't really planning on doing this sort of video this year, but I don't know. I just kind of feel like it. I also honestly feel like being a lot more casual this year. I don't think I need like my bookshelves in the background of every single video. Like, I don't think you need that to know that this is a BookTube video. So like, you can all deal with my messy bed in the background. So this video is going to be the like top books. Oh my god. Wow, okay, 2020 already trying to silence me. I think the universe knows that I'm probably not going to read all of these books. I really want to, but whenever I say that I really want to do something, I end up procrastinating and never doing it. But you know, I love setting myself up to fail. Case in point being, I think I read 9 of the 19 books I wanted to read last year. But you know, new year, new me, I get a second chance at this. So this video is going to be like my kind of like reading-ish goals, and then like the top 20 books that I want to read in 2020. So goals wise, I don't really have that many. I technically have like 5, but they're all very casual. So my first reading goal for 2020 is that I want to read 75 books this year. I think it's like one book every like 4 and a bit days or something, which is scary to think of it like that. But I kind of feel like I need to trick my brain, you know, by setting it as something that's like just achievable. So yeah, it also means that things like wrap-ups and like TBRs should be like, you know, a lot more interesting, because hopefully I'll have more to talk about. My next like little challenge thing is to like read more series or just complete more series. I own a lot of complete series and I haven't read any of the books in that series. I also have a lot of series where I've read like the first book or maybe like the first 2 books, but there's a lot to go. I just want to cut down on like the number of unread series that I have, because I feel like if I don't start them, I'll never know how I feel about them, and like maybe if the first book sucks I can just unhaul them and get them off my TBR. And then on the other side of things, there are a bunch of series where like I just need to know how it ends. So I really do want to try and prioritise series. I have like a whole page in my bullet journal, and yes, these are all of the series that I need to read, including how many books are on there, and like, not to be rude, but like Wheel of Time and Cosmere are looking scary. Sort of like kind of on the same note, I also want to read a lot more like well-known fantasy. You're probably going to see a little bit in some of the books that I've picked, but there are a lot of really big, well-known, big name kind of fantasy series and books that I just haven't read, and I just really want to change that this year. I just want to try several authors and several series, and hopefully I will find some new favourites, but even if I don't really click with any of them, it just means that I can move them off of like my wider sort of like mental TBR, and then I won't be worrying about whether or not I like them and whether or not I like need to get to them. I mean, I'm hoping that I'll like them all, but I have to read them to find that out. So, and then kind of completely on the other end of the spectrum, my next goal is to read more self-published work. So I've never really been opposed to reading self-published work, but you have to admit it's a lot harder to find. It's a lot harder to find recommendations for it. Just as an example, things like Amazon and Goodreads, to my knowledge, don't have any way to sort by like traditionally or self-published books. So if you're looking specifically to read something self-published, you kind of have to do a lot of legwork on your own. So I find that over like the past year, I haven't really read that many self-published works. But yeah, particularly since joining AuthorTube and seeing like the sort of amazing people that are out there self-publishing like right now, I really did just want to support some of like the amazing self-published authors that could be out there potentially like writing my next favourite book. And then my last like goal sort of thing is I really want to just mood read a lot more. I kind of really just want to read like whatever I feel like reading at the time, and not like what BookTube says is popular or like the big new release or whatever. I kind of just want to read whatever the hell I feel like. Not always rely on like something being popular on BookTube, because like I do get suckered in quite a lot, and I have bought a lot of books because of BookTube hype, and that's not always a bad thing. But like one of my favourite books last year and one of my new favourite books of all time was a book that I had never heard anybody else speak of before. I just picked it up solely because I was interested in it and I just felt like reading it at the time, and I feel like I need to do that more. And it means that hopefully if I do find something good, I can bring you guys like a hidden gem that maybe you haven't heard like 10, 20, 100 other people all recommending before. I think it will also help me not get into slumps as well. I might still do things like taking part in readathons and making like set TBRs for certain months, but I do kind of just want to give myself like that opportunity to just do whatever the hell I feel like. Okay, so with all my goals out of the way, I'm going to get onto the top 20 books that I hopefully want to read in 2020. Some of these are new releases, some of these are continuations of series that I'm so hyped for. Some of them are, like I said, like some bigger fantasy, classic sort of things that I've just never read. So there's a pretty diverse mix. It is basically all fantasy. Don't act surprised. So without further ado, here are the top 20 books that I want to get to this year. Number 1 on my list is, of course, Empire of the Vampire by Jay Kristoff. How could it not be? So Jay Kristoff was an author I discovered last year. I loved his Nevernight series. Spoilers, Nevernight was my favourite book of last year. I met him, he's really charismatic and interesting, and I loved the voice that he wrote with in Nevernight. It was very dark, very bloody, very, I don't know, just fun, humorous, witty. I loved it. And now he is coming out with a vampire book. I feel like the book gods have said, hey, you know what? You had to read some pretty crappy books last year. Have this. It's on us. Have this one. Because I feel like this has the potential to be like a new all-time favourite, potentially favourite book of all time. Because like Nevernight was so good, 5 stars. But also, you give me something like written by the same author, but with vampires? Do I have to say anything else about this? I am so hype. I'm not sure I've ever been like more excited for a book that wasn't like part of a series I was already into. You could execute me at dawn tomorrow and I would rise from my grave when this book releases. Have no chill. Okay, calming down. The second book that I really want to read in 2020 is The Shadow Saint by Gareth Hanrahan. This is the sequel to The Gutter Prayer, which again was one of my favourite books of last year. The first book in this series essentially follows 3 thieves in this weird, dark, grimdark theological kind of city. Outside the walls of this city there is this war raging called the Gods War, and it's kind of like, it's essentially like gods fighting gods, faith versus other faith. It's really weird. But the city that our protagonists find themselves in is sort of like a neutral state in this war. The city's sort of presided over by this guild of alchemists that make these sort of, again, like world-alteringly bad weapons. And I don't really want to go like too much into the story of the first book because it is fantastic, and I feel like the less you know going in and the more like confused and surprised you are by like all the weird stuff that happens, I feel like it's a better experience. But like the kind of basic plot is that one of these 3 thieves suddenly starts having these like really weird visions that might be magic, might be prophecy, nobody really knows. But it lands them in a really weird and difficult situation, and the story just kind of explodes from there. This is obviously part 2. I am just so excited to pick up where we left off and carry this on. I do not know if this is a duology. I don't know if this is like the finale or if there are more books to come in this series, but either way, this one is on my list because I really loved the first book in the series. It was one of like my most anticipated reads of last year, so I really wanted to put this one on this year. Book number 3, and I think this comes out this year. It is Any Way the Wind Blows by Rainbow Rowell. So this is going to be book 3 in her like Simon Snow series. The main reason that this is on the list is because Wayward Son came out this year and I was very disappointed by the way that it ended. I felt like there was so much more left to give, so I really just want to get the ending that I was denied in book 2. Book number 4, and one that I'm pretty damn sure I had on my list last year, and that is The Vampire Lestat by Anne Rice. I reread Interview with a Vampire last year. It was a 5-star book. Still, it's one of my favourite books of all time, and I reread it because I had thought that around Halloween I would finally get back to the sequel, and I still never got round to it. So I really just want to read it this year. Anne Rice is one of my favourite authors. I freaking love vampires, so yeah, I really want to get back to it. Book number 5, again, pretty sure this may have been on last year's list. That is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. This is one of those like bigger name popular fantasies that I mentioned before that I really want to finally get into. I know basically nothing about the plot of this book, but I've heard so many good things about this book from both booktubers and also people I know in real life who tell me that I would probably love this book. I don't know why I didn't pick this up last year. It may just because it's a bit chunky and I don't know. But I don't feel like I can go into the new decade with still having not read this. Like, I really need to get to it at some point. I really do hope that I will love it. I keep hearing rumours that the next book in the series is potentially coming out in 2020, and do you know? maybe I would like to be reading that around the time it comes out. That might be a stretch, but yeah, I really want to get to this one. Book number 6 is Red Sister by Mark Lawrence. This is like another big name in fantasy. This is another really popular series that I hear really, really good things about. So what I think I know about this book is that a young girl is given to like a convent of nuns, and the nuns raise the girls to be like warriors, assassins, something like that. It's just giving me that kind of like, you know, stabby girl vibe that I feel like I'm missing. I really like the idea of like magical, potentially assassin-y kind of school vibes again, and yeah, I've just heard a lot of good things about it. I feel like it will be a really good, fun read for me. The series is not that long, it's only a trilogy, and like the last book is really shockingly short. So I feel like as well, since I've kind of written off one of Mark Lawrence's other series, if I'm going to read anything by him, it's probably going to have to start with this one. Book number 7 is The Wolf by Leo Carew. I picked this up on a whim, sort of partially as a cover buy and sort of partially because it gave me like a cross between like historical and like fantasy vibes, to the point where I'm not sure whether it's actually set in the real world or just very heavily based on Britain. But I think the vague story is that in a world very much like Britain, the people of the North live for hundreds, if not thousands of years, and I think a war breaks out between the North and the South. And so I think this is a grimdarky fantasy kind of war-based book. And yeah, that really just drew me in. I did spray the edges of this one, so I'm committed to the aesthetic. The other reason that I really wanted to get to this one this year is because I've heard a lot of good things from several YouTubers, particularly Leanna from Leanna's Library raves about this book quite a lot, and I find that I have a lot of similar opinions to her when it comes to certain books. So it just kind of made me really excited to read this one. I've heard a lot of good things. So yes, I am hoping to get to this one this year, hoping to see what the fuss is all about, and hopefully I will also love it. Number 8, another one that is not out yet, but I think potentially comes out this year, and that is part 2 in the Nikolai duology by Leigh Bardugo. We are so far down a rabbit hole of connecting separate series that I don't really know what is and isn't spoilery for like book descriptions anymore, but basically this is set in Leigh Bardugo's Grishaverse. That's kind of where like my whole hype for it lies. I really like Leigh Bardugo, I really enjoy her works, I think she's a fantastic YA fantasy author, and yeah, basically what can I say, I'm a hoe for the Grisha series. I really just like this world that she's crafted, and while I'm maybe not a fan of every single book in this universe, I do really just like the world, and I like Leigh Bardugo's writing. So yeah, basically I'll buy anything that she puts out in this universe, and so I'm just hyped for this one. Book number 9 on my list is Dragonflight by Anne McCaffrey. This again is one of those much older, kind of like more thought of as like a classic fantasy series, like a big staple of the genre. That said, I'm pretty sure, like I have not read this book or any book in this series, but I'm pretty sure that this is a blend of like fantasy and sci-fi, and it has dragons, so I really have no excuse not to love it because like, oh my god, I love dragons, and if anyone does dragons, it's Anne McCaffrey. Kind of my main reason for putting this book on this list is because this is the oldest book on my TBR. I have owned this book for longer than some of you have probably been alive. That's all I'm gonna say. Book number 10, again with the big name fantasy, is The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan, the first in the Wheel of Time series. So yeah, this is purely just because I really want to get into this series. It's like such a huge name in fantasy. I feel like you have like The Lord of the Rings as like the granddaddy of fantasy, and then you have this. I don't think I've ever heard a bad thing about this. So many people that I follow are either big lifelong fans of this or they're just starting to read it and just raving about it, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure I will love this. I really want to read the whole series. It's kind of intimidating, but like, I'm pretty sure I can manage. Right? I don't really know the plot of this one too much, but I don't really feel like I need to. I'm just going to go into this blind and just see where it takes me, and yeah, I think I'm just so ready to finally read this and finally get into like one of the, I guess, like cornerstones of the modern fantasy genre. Like, I am just so ready. Book number 11 is Before They Are Hanged by Joe Abercrombie. This is another big name in fantasy, but this is also a series that I need to continue. I read The Blade itself in 2019, loved it, one of my top books of the year, and so I really just want to continue with this series. I think there's like 8 in total in this universe. My main goal is to finish the trilogy, therefore this is the next book in line. I'm hoping that maybe I'll get further than that, but this one at least is one that I definitely need to get to in 2020. Book number 12 in my top 20 is Foundryside by Robert Jackson Bennett. This one is just kind of on here by how much hype I've heard about this series. I picked this one up kind of on a whim. I'd heard like one or two good things about it and I really liked the cover, so I just picked it up. And since then I've heard so many other booktubers read it and rave about it and rate it like 5 stars. Apparently like the magic system is really intricate and unique, and do you know, I am just really wanting to see what the fuss is all about, especially because I already owned a copy of this. I feel like BookTube making me more hype for something that I already had on my TBR. It can definitely only bode well, I hope. Book number 13 is Ravencry by Ed McDonald. This is another series continuation, so I read Blackwing earlier in 2019. I loved it, again, on my top 10. And so this is book 2 in that series, and again, I really want to be continuing with the series, and I really liked how extremely bleak, miserable, grimdark this world was. Book 1 just ended in such a way that while the sort of like core story of book 1 is over, it's just this whole other mess of other plot lines, and like I just want to see where we end up going. So yeah, I just really want to get back to this world. This is one of these series that I am most excited to continue with, and so I really could never forgive myself if I got through 2020 and for some reason hadn't picked this up yet. It is only a trilogy, so like maybe, hopefully, I will have read the whole thing by the end of the year, but this one, for sure, definitely has to be read. Number 14 on my list is Godblind by Anna Stephens. So this is one where I don't really know anything about it. I don't really know anybody else that's rated it. However, something keeps drawing me to this book, and honestly, I'm just interested. This is very like spur of the moment for me to put this on this list. I'm very interested in reading it like now. But just something about this book, something about like the cover, I just get excited looking at this and thinking like, I just really want to pick it up. It just looks like the kind of book that I would enjoy. Like, it has those vibes. It has the aesthetic of like a dark, bloody, grimdarky, stabby kind of book, and it talks about like fallen gods. So like, really, I just want to try it. I keep thinking about it, and so it's on this list. Not because I'm like determined to read it this year, but because I just kind of can't stop thinking about the cover. Like, I don't know why. I don't know why. So I'm just putting it on this list. Book number 15, another one that I'm not 100% totally sure comes out this year. I'm only kind of gathering from what the author has previously said, but that is the 3rd book in the Banned series by Nicholas Eames. I don't know who this book will be following. I don't know like what the plot will be. All I know is I really liked the first 2 books in this series, so Kings of the Wild and Bloody Rose. Kings of the Wild ended up being on like my top 10 favourites list. I feel like it's just such a good, fun, laid-back, accessible fantasy, and I really like the world he's created. And do you know, I just really enjoyed all of my time spent reading those books. So the fact that there's a 3rd one in the series coming out, and I'm gonna get like another chance to just like be in this world and enjoy like the humour of it and the personality of it. Like, I am so excited for this book, and I'm only like guessing based on what the author said about like his like schedule timeline kind of thing, that maybe it will come out in 2020. So like, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that it will, because if it does, reading this immediately upon its release. Book number 16, and here it is, my big commitment to like a big series. It is Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. So I feel like I don't need to say a lot about Brandon Sanderson or his Cosmere series. I feel like he's kind of one of like the biggest names in fantasy right now. Like, so many people have said such amazing things about his work, and I kind of can't believe I've never read any Brandon Sanderson yet. I think it's one of those things where I'm so excited to get to it, but I keep putting it off because I'm like, one half of me is like really savor this like potential 5 stars that it might be, and the other half is like, what if I hate it? But I'm finally going to put this all to rest this year, and I'm going to start reading my way through Brandon Sanderson. So Elantris is not the book that I am most excited for. It's not the series that I'm like most excited for. However, I have decided on my own particular reading order. I want to read by series and also by publication order. I'm not going to go through my whole reading order here, but I have made sure that like any books I need to read before certain others are all in like the right order. But essentially, Elantris was his first published book, and so I am going to start with this one. A lot of people start with Mistborn, that's fine. I do have Mistborn and I really considered putting Mistborn on the list, but if I'm gonna start somewhere, I'm gonna start here. Book number 17 on my list is The Calling by David Gaider, and like, this book weighs a ton. This is book 2 in the Dragon Age series of published novels that sort of like coincide with the video games. If you're not interested in the games, if you don't play Dragon Age, if you don't play BioWare games, I have no idea like what to tell you about this series other than like it's high fantasy. Oh my god, my favourite fantasy world of all time. I love Dragon Age with all my heart. And yet, despite having owned the books in paperback and now in hardback for like a long time, I've only ever read the first one, and I gave the first book 5 stars. It's one of my favourite books ever. But again, for some reason, I just haven't finished it. And so I really need to finish this series. I'm kind of putting this book here because I did start this one, and so I really definitely want to reread all the rest of the book that I started and then like finish it. But also, I own so much Dragon Age media that I need to read in a certain order, and I want to get to the rest of it, but I have to work my way through the books first. Otherwise, it will just be a load of spoilers. And they do tie into the games, and I do really love the games. They're like my favourite thing ever. So I really just want to consume more Dragon Age this year is what I'm trying to say. And this book is kind of where I think I'm going to start with it. Book number 18, and not one that I really thought I would have on this list, but I'm going to put it here tentatively anyway, and that is The Damned by Renee Ahdieh. So the reason that this one is on this list is because I was so hyped for The Beautiful, which is the first book in this, I think, duology, and the marketing promised me vampires and I did not get the vampires that I wanted. So that was like the whole reason for my disappointment. This book being the continuation, I'm thinking will have a lot more vampire-ness in it, and I'm hoping, therefore, that this will maybe be the book that I thought I would get with book 1. I did like book 1 enough to want to continue the series, and it's kind of a case of I want to finish this series and close it off, see whether in the end I do like it, and again, it's got vampires, and I need more vampires in my life, and I'm hoping that this one actually has sufficient vampires to sort of like count as an actual vampire book. Like, that's what I'm hoping for. It is, I believe, set to release this year. The cover looks stunning, and so yeah, I just really want to get this one, read it, and just finally be like, hopefully satisfied by like the conclusion, which hopefully will have a lot of vampires. Book number 19, it is A Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. One chunky boy. Do I have to say anything about this? Really? Yeah, I said I was going to read it last year. Once the TV show finished, I was like, I'm going to need a pick-me-up. I'm going to like miss the world, miss the characters, and I'm just, you know, want to go back to being like a sweet summer child when everyone was alive for like the first page. And, you know, I really just want to get back into this. I definitely don't have the fear that I will not like this. Like, I know I'm going to like it pretty much no matter what. I don't think I can be disappointed by this. I don't mind that I already know everything that happens in this book because there's going to be more there for me to learn, and like, I want to see like the differences. I feel like this is just going to be a much more detailed version of a story that I already know like the beginning to. And I feel like no matter how slow it gets in parts, no matter how like tedious like the characters might seem at certain parts, I've heard people say that parts of it kind of drag. I don't think I can feel that way. I feel like my interest for the series is at a point where I could literally read about like Ned Stark eating his breakfast and I'd probably still be interested. I'm the kind of person that when I get into a big new world like this, I am happy to just sit and read Wikipedia articles about like the houses and the history and all that kind of thing. So I do not fear the potential threat of like tedium in this book. I don't think it's going to hit me. I think no matter what, I'm going to enjoy every part of this book in this series. So yeah, I just really need to get to it this year. Like, it's been too long. I have no excuse. And the last book, number 20, another repeat from last year. Another one that I'm such a failure for not having read last year. It is, of course, BookTube favourite Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. I still didn't read this last year. I just keep not getting to it. I don't know why. I will say my excitement to read this one has kind of waned a little bit. I feel like I've developed so much more of a taste for like big, epic, overarching grimdark fantasies. This was definitely kind of a cover buy, and obviously BookTube hyped this up like beyond belief. I own both books in this duology. I think that I will like it. I don't know whether I will like it as much as I initially thought I would. So like, I've had it on my shelf for a while and I've just never picked it up, and I don't know why. and I really just want to get to it this year. I really just want to like get it off my TBR, and I just really do want to get to it at some point. I cannot continue to have this book like haunting me. So yes, that's it. They were the top 20 books that I decided I am like most prioritizing for 2020. So hopefully you'll be seeing some of these books on like my future TBRs and wrap-ups, and you know, if it gets to like October, November, December and I haven't read some of these, you are really going to have to start commenting and being like, look, you can't do this 2 years in a row. Where are all these books you said you would read? So yes, hopefully by the end of the year I can look back on this and say like, oh yeah, I actually read all of those books, ha ha ha, how great am I? But I feel like maybe we should know that that might not necessarily happen. But like, fingers crossed, hopefully I actually do what I say I'm gonna do, and I do actually read all of these books. So yeah, with that said, that's kind of the end of the video. I don't know where to go from here other than just rambling, so I am going to end this before it gets too long. And yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Let me know like what you're most excited for in 2020, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!